She begged with tears in her eyes, "Please don't lift my skirt." But he didn't want her body. He wanted the truth she had hidden since childhood. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment saying where you're watching from. The stone mansion rises like a scar atop the Blue Ridge Mountains, isolated among the peaks of Asheville, North Carolina. The cold wind that descends from the slopes carries with it the weight of secrets buried for decades, whispering among the pine trees that surround the property like silent sentinels. It is here that Andrew Morgan lives, at 43, heir to a hotel empire that spreads throughout the country, but who carries on his back the burden of scandals hushed by money and influence. The Blackstone Estate, as it is known by the few residents of the region, hasn't received visitors for almost 5 years. Andrew transformed that place into a sanctuary of memories he prefers to keep locked away. The corridors echo only with his solitary footsteps, and the mirrors remain covered by white cloths that have already yellowed with time. On the second floor, an entire wing remains sealed, and in the main office all clocks eternally mark 3:17 in the morning. The local workers know that working for Andrew Morgan means accepting silence and distance. He pays well, very well, but demands that his privacy be respected as sacred law. That's why when the housekeeper position opens again, few apply. The last woman who held the position left without explanations after only 3 weeks, leaving behind just a scribbled note. This house keeps ghosts that shouldn't be awakened. Claire Adams arrives at the property on a cold July morning, when fog still embraces the mountains like a grey cloak. At 22, she carries on her shoulders a maturity that doesn't match her age. Daughter of migrants from the South who came to New York in search of a better life, she grew up in the eastern suburbs, where she learned early that the world doesn't forgive the weak. Orphaned by her mother since 15, raised only by her father until he died in a construction accident, Claire knows the pain of losing everything and starting again from zero. But there's something deeper in Claire, a wound that she hides under layers of modesty and silence, a memory that shaped her relationship with her own body, with touch, with proximity. She always dresses in long clothes, skirts that cover her knees, long-sleeved blouses even in the heat. Her brown hair is always tied in a tight bun, and her green eyes, although beautiful, carry a constant vigilance, as if they were always on alert. For Claire, accepting work for a reclusive millionaire in Asheville represents more than a job opportunity. It's a chance to hide from the world, to create a safe distance between her and the memories that haunt her. She doesn't seek adventures or romances. She seeks only peace, routine, and a place where she can exist without being questioned about her past. When the taxi leaves her at the wrought iron gate of the property, Claire feels a shiver that doesn't come just from the mountain cold. The mansion imposes itself before her like a living presence, with its dark windows that seem to observe her. The trees around sway with the wind, creating shadows that dance on the stone facade, and she has the strange sensation that she's being analyzed, weighed, judged. The gatekeeper, an elderly man of few smiles, leads her in silence through the well-kept gardens to the main entrance. "Mr. Andrew is waiting for you in the library," he murmurs without making eye contact. "Remember, he doesn't like noise, doesn't like questions, and especially doesn't like curiosity about things that don't concern you." Claire nods, accustomed to rigid rules. Growing up in the suburbs taught her to respect hierarchies and not ask unnecessary questions. She follows the gatekeeper through corridors lined with Persian rugs, walls decorated with old paintings, and furniture that seems to have cost more than everything she has ever owned in her life. The library is an imposing environment, with shelves that go from floor to ceiling, filled with books in various languages. A fireplace crackles softly in a corner, and the golden light from the lamps creates an atmosphere that should be welcoming, but that Claire feels as oppressive. It is there that she sees him for the first time. Andrew Morgan has his back turned, observing through a tall window the fog-covered gardens. He is tall, with broad shoulders that perfectly fill the dark suit he wears. His black hair has grey strands at the temples, and when he turns to face her, Claire feels an unexpected impact. His eyes are of such an intense blue that they seem to see through her, and there is a strange mixture of authority and melancholy in them. His face is angular, masculine, marked by lines that speak of someone who carries heavy burdens. He doesn't smile, doesn't make gestures of courtesy. He just observes her in silence, as if trying to decipher some enigma. "Claire Adams," he finally says, and his voice is deep, controlled, with a refined East Coast accent. "I read your resume. You don't have experience in houses of this caliber." "No, sir," she responds, keeping her eyes lowered. "But I learn quickly and I don't ask questions." He walks around her slowly, and Claire feels each step as if it were a judgment. "In this house there are rules that are not negotiable," he says. "The east wing remains locked, always. You must not try to open those doors nor ask about them. The second floor is for my exclusive use. You must knock and wait for permission before entering any room where I am." Claire agrees, but there is something in the intensity of his gaze that makes her feel exposed, as if he could see through the layers of protection that she built around herself. "There's one more thing," Andrew continues, stopping in front of her. "This house keeps memories. You may hear noises, may feel presences. Ignore them. Don't investigate. And most importantly, don't get involved with things you don't understand." Claire's first days at Blackstone Estate pass in a silent and meticulous routine. She wakes before dawn, when the fog still embraces the mountains, and walks through the mansion's rooms like a discreet shadow. She cleans, organizes, prepares the meals that Andrew rarely touches, and keeps the house functioning like a precise and silent mechanism. The mansion gradually reveals its architectural secrets. The ground floor rooms are spacious and well decorated, but carry an air of abandonment, as if they hadn't been inhabited for years. The kitchen is modern and functional, equipped with everything Claire might need, but she notices that there are supplies for an entire family, while only she, Andrew, and the old gatekeeper, who lives in a separate house at the back of the property, live there. Claire establishes a careful routine to avoid unnecessary encounters with her employer. She observes his schedule. He works in the office from 8 in the morning until noon, lunches alone on the back porch, and spends the afternoons walking through the gardens or reading in the library. At night, after 9, she hears his footsteps on the second floor, always following the same path, always stopping in the same place for long minutes. But it's impossible to completely ignore his presence. Andrew has a disturbing way of appearing in rooms when she least expects it. He makes no noise when walking, and Claire gets used to feeling his gaze before seeing him. He never speaks beyond what's necessary, but when he does, his words have a weight that accompanies her for hours. "The coffee is too strong," he says one morning, without raising his eyes from the newspaper. "I'm sorry, sir, I'll make another." "Don't bother." He looks at her over the newspaper. "My mother made coffee like this, strong enough to wake the dead." It's a small confidence, but in Andrew's mouth it sounds like an intimate revelation. Claire doesn't know how to respond, so she just nods and walks away, but carries with her the image of him talking about his mother with a melancholy he can't disguise. The nights are the most difficult time. Claire settles in the staff bedroom on the ground floor, a simple but comfortable space, and tries to read or watch television to fill the silence. But the mansion seems to come alive after dark. The old furniture creaks, the windows tremble with the mountain wind, and there's always a sound she can't identify, like footsteps that don't belong to Andrew, like voices whispering in empty rooms. On one of these nights, Claire wakes to the sound of something breaking on the floor above. It's 2 in the morning, and she hesitates between ignoring it or checking what happened. The caretaker instinct speaks louder, and she climbs the wooden stairs that creak under her bare feet. The light in the second-floor hallway is on, and she sees glass shards scattered across the floor. Andrew is there in pajamas and barefoot, picking up pieces of what appears to have been a whiskey glass. There's a dark stain on the Persian rug, and when he raises his head to look at her, Claire sees that his eyes are red, not just from tiredness. "Go back to your room," he says, but his voice sounds more tired than authoritative. "Are you hurt?" Claire asks, noticing a small cut on his right hand. "It's nothing." But Claire has already gone down to the kitchen and returned with a first aid kit. She kneels beside him on the floor among the glass shards and extends her hand. "May I?" Andrew hesitates. There is something in the simplicity of her gesture, in the absence of judgment in her eyes, that disarms him. He extends his hand, and when Claire touches his skin to clean the cut, both feel an electric current that makes them look at each other. It's the first time Claire has voluntarily touched a man since what she prefers not to remember. But Andrew's hand is warm, masculine, and strangely safe. He doesn't try anything beyond accepting the care, and this reassures her in a way she didn't expect. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" he asks suddenly. Claire stops cleaning the cut and looks at him. "Should I be?" "Most people are. They say I'm cold, controlling. that this house is cursed. "I don't believe in curses," Claire responds, returning to tend to the wound, "only in people who carry very great pains." He watches her work, noticing the concentration on her face, the delicacy of her movements. "And you? What pains do you carry?" The question catches Claire off guard. She finishes the bandage and moves away, creating distance between them again. "We all carry something, don't we?" Andrew nods but doesn't insist. They finish collecting the shards in silence, and when Claire gets up to leave, he calls her by name. "Claire," she turns. "Thank you." It's a simple word, but in his mouth it sounds like a confession. Claire nods and goes down to her room, but it takes hours for her to fall asleep. The sensation of his skin still burns on her hands, and she wonders why such a powerful man seems so lost. The next day, Andrew treats her with the same formality as always, but Claire notices small changes. He doesn't disappear immediately after meals. Sometimes he finds her cleaning the library and stays for a few minutes, leafing through a book or adjusting the fireplace. They don't talk, but his presence has ceased to be threatening and become intriguing. One afternoon, while organizing books on a high shelf, Claire loses her balance on the ladder. She closes her eyes, expecting the fall, but feels strong arms holding her by the waist. Andrew supports her against his chest, and for a moment they stay like this, very close, breathing the same air. Claire can smell his masculine cologne, a mix of wood and something indefinable that makes her think of safety. She raises her eyes and meets his, and there is something there that makes her forget all the fears she carries. "Are you all right?" he asks, but doesn't immediately let her go. "I am," she whispers, but her legs are trembling, and it's not from the shock of the fall. When Andrew finally releases her, Claire misses the warmth of his arms. She moves away, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands, and tries to return to work as if nothing had happened, but something has changed between them. A line has been crossed. A wall has begun to crack. The change in the dynamic between Claire and Andrew becomes more evident as the days pass. He begins to appear in the kitchen during meal preparation, initially with the excuse of requesting changes to the menu, but gradually just observing her work. Claire feels the weight of his gaze like a physical presence, but strangely doesn't mind. There is something in the way he observes her that is different from other men. It's not predatory, it's almost respectful. One Saturday morning, while Claire is cleaning the library, she finds a book fallen behind an old armchair. It's an antique copy of East of Eden with yellowed pages and notes in the margins. When she flips through it, a photograph falls to the floor. Claire picks it up and feels her heart race. It's a photo of a young woman, brunette, with clear eyes and a shy smile. She is standing next to an older man, whom Claire recognizes as Andrew's father from the photos she's seen around the house. But what shocks her is the woman's resemblance to herself. The same brown hair, the same delicate bone structure, even the shape of the eyes. "You shouldn't be touching that." Andrew's deep voice makes her jump with surprise. He is at the door of the library, and there is a tension in his posture that Claire hasn't seen before. She quickly extends the photo, but he doesn't move to take it. "I'm sorry, sir, the book had fallen and—" "Who is she?" Andrew asks, ignoring the apologies. "I don't know. I found the photo inside the book." He approaches slowly, as if each step cost an immense effort. When he takes the photograph, Claire sees his hands tremble slightly. "Her name was Helen," he says, more to himself than to Claire. "She worked here many years ago for my parents." "She's very beautiful," Claire comments, noticing the pain in his eyes. "What happened to her?" Andrew looks at her with an indecipherable expression. "Why do you want to know?" "I don't know. She reminds me of someone." There is a long silence between them. Andrew puts the photo in the inside pocket of his jacket and moves away. Forget what you saw. Some stories are better left buried. But Claire can't forget. Over the following days, the image of the woman in the photograph haunts her. She begins to notice details in the house that previously went unnoticed. A room on the ground floor that always remains locked, different from the sealed rooms in the East Wing that Andrew mentioned. A chair on the back porch that seems to have been positioned for someone specific. Always fresh flowers in a vase in the dining room, as if someone regularly changed them. One night Claire can't sleep. Curiosity about Helen consumes her, and she decides to explore the house more carefully. She walks through the silent corridors, paying attention to every detail. when she hears a sound coming from the kitchen. She finds Andrew there in a robe, preparing tea with automatic movements. "Can't sleep either?" he asks without turning around. "Sometimes I have insomnia," Claire responds, approaching cautiously. "Want some tea? It's chamomile. Helen used to make it when I was a child and had nightmares." The name escapes him naturally as if it were an old habit. Claire accepts the cup, and they sit at the kitchen table, surrounded by the soft twilight of the light above the stove. "She took care of you?" Claire asks gently. Andrew drinks his tea in silence for a long moment. "Helen arrived here when I was 12 years old. My mother had died 2 years before, and my father, he didn't know how to deal with a son alone." Helen was young, in her early 20s, and needed work. She was from a simple family from the interior of Virginia. Claire listens attentively, realizing that this is the first time Andrew has spoken about his childhood. "She became more than an employee. She was like an older sister, a friend. She took care of the house, of me, and gradually won over even my father, who was a very closed man after my mother's death." "And what happened to her?" Andrew squeezes the cup between his hands. "She got pregnant. My father, he didn't take responsibility. He said she had gotten involved with someone from the region. Helen tried to prove that the child was his, but my father had power, money, influence. He expelled her from the house with a sum of money and the threat of destroying her reputation if she tried to return." Claire feels a tightness in her chest. "And you, what did you do?" "I was a 16-year-old boy. I believed my father. I thought Helen had betrayed me somehow, that she wasn't the person I thought I knew." His voice carries an immense weight of regret. "I discovered the truth years later, when my father died and I found letters she had written, letters asking for help, saying she was in need, that the child had been born with health problems and needed treatment. Did you try to find her?" "I tried, but it was too late. Helen had died in an accident, a fire in a boarding house in New York where she was living. The child, a girl, disappeared. The neighbors said distant relatives took her, but I never managed to discover who or where." Claire feels the world spin around her. A girl, a fire, New York. The pieces begin to fit together in a terrifying way in her mind. What was her name? The daughter? Andrew looks at her with curiosity at the intensity of her question. "I only knew from the birth certificate I found years later. Claire. The girl's name was Claire." The cup slips from Claire's hands and shatters on the floor. She stands up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor, and Andrew immediately gets to his feet as well. "Claire, what's wrong?" She looks at him with wide eyes, her chest rising and falling rapidly. All the memories she had buried return like an avalanche. The fire, the screams, the hands that pulled her from the smoke, her mother's face shouting her name before everything became darkness. "My mother," she whispers, her voice coming out strangled. "My mother's name was Helen Adams." The silence that follows is deafening. Andrew observes her as if seeing a ghost, and perhaps he is. Claire backs up until she hits the wall, her legs trembling, the world crumbling around her. "You are," he begins, but can't finish the sentence. "I am her daughter," Claire confirms, tears beginning to stream down her face. "The daughter your father abandoned, the child you left to starve." Andrew tries to approach, but Claire raises her hands to keep him away. "Don't come near me," she says, her voice broken by pain and anger. "You destroyed my mother, destroyed my life." "Claire, please let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you had so much money that you threw crumbs to a pregnant woman as if she were a dog. How your father preferred to let a child go hungry, rather than admit he had impregnated the maid." The words come out like knives, cutting the air between them. Andrew is pale, his hands extended toward her, but not knowing how to reach her. "I didn't know," he says, his voice almost a whisper. "I was just a boy. If I had known—" "But now you know," Claire interrupts, wiping tears with the back of her hand. "Now you know that the daughter of the woman your family destroyed is here, in your house, cleaning the furniture she once cleaned." What irony, isn't it? Claire runs out of the kitchen, leaving Andrew alone among the shards of the broken cup and the wreckage of a truth that neither of them was prepared to face. She runs through the dark corridors to her room, locks the door, and lets herself slide down the wall to the floor, where she cries with an intensity she hasn't felt in years. All the repressed memories return with devastating force. Her mother, Helen, always speaking fondly of the good times when she worked in a beautiful farm on the mountain. The moments when she murmured a name, Andrew, with a mixture of longing and resentment. The nights when her mother cried softly, thinking Claire was asleep, whispering about the boy she had loved like a brother and the man who had betrayed her. Claire always imagined her mother had had a relationship that ended badly, but never suspected the complete truth. Now sitting on the cold floor of a room in the same house where her mother once lived and was humiliated, she feels a rage that burns like living fire in her chest. On the other side of the door, she hears cautious footsteps. Andrew. Claire. His voice sounds muffled through the wood. Please let me explain. Go away, she answers, her voice hoarse from crying so much. I know you're angry. You have every right. But I need you to know that I didn't know who you were when I hired you. It was a terrible coincidence. Coincidence? Claire stands up and opens the door abruptly. Andrew is there, still in his robe, hair disheveled, eyes red. Or did you know exactly who I was and brought me here for what? To finish what your father started? No, he says, his voice firm. I would never do that. When I read your resume, when I saw you for the first time, I felt there was something familiar, but I couldn't identify what. Now I understand. You have her eyes, the same way of tilting your head when you're thinking. The mention of the similarities with her mother makes Claire feel a new wave of pain. Don't talk about her. You have no right. Yes, I do, Andrew retorts, and there is a firmness in his voice that surprises her. Helen was important to me. She raised me, loved me when my own father barely looked in my direction. When she left, I felt abandoned, betrayed. She didn't leave, Claire shouts, the tears returning. She was expelled, pregnant, alone, without money, without a place to go. I know that now, Andrew says, approaching a step. And I live with that guilt every day. That's why this house is the way it is. That's why the clocks stop at 3:17, the hour she left. That's why the east wing stays locked. It was where the staff quarters were, where she slept. That's why I couldn't relate to anyone, couldn't trust anyone. Claire observes him, seeing for the first time the pain he carries. But her own pain is greater, more raw, more immediate. Your guilt doesn't bring my mother back, she says. It doesn't erase the nights we went hungry, the times she worked while sick to get money for my medicine, the humiliations she endured for being a single mother. I know, and if I could go back in time, but you can't. No one can. Claire wipes her face with the back of her hand. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I can't stay here. Where will you go? That's not your problem. Andrew hesitates, then says something she didn't expect. Stay. What? Stay. At least until you decide what you want to do. This house was your mother's too, in a way. She lived here, took care of this place. You have more right to be here than I do. Claire looks at him in disbelief. You're crazy if you think I'll accept charity. It's not charity, it's justice. Andrew runs a hand through his hair, a gesture that reveals his tension. My father left moral debts that were never paid. Let me start to pay them. I don't need your money. It's not about money, it's about doing what's right. Helen deserved to have a dignified life, deserved for her daughter to grow up without need. I can't give that to her, but I can give it to you. Claire feels an internal war between anger and something she can't identify. There is sincerity in Andrew's voice, a vulnerability she hadn't noticed before, but there is also the memory of her mother crying, working until exhaustion, dying too young because of privations. I need to think, she finally says. Of course. Take all the time you need. But as Andrew moves away, Claire calls him. One thing. I want to see her room, the room where my mother slept. He stops, his back tense. The east wing. I know it's there. I want to see. Andrew turns slowly. All right. But it hasn't been touched since she left. My father locked everything up and I never had the courage to enter. Tomorrow, Claire says, after I decide whether I stay or go. She closes the door, but this time doesn't lock it. From the other side, she hears Andrew sigh deeply before moving away. Claire returns to the bed, but can't sleep. She spends the night looking out the window at the gardens illuminated by the moon, thinking of her mother walking those same paths 20 years ago. When dawn finally arrives, Claire makes a decision. She will stay, at least for now. Not for Andrew, not for money or guilt, but for her mother, to understand the life she had here, to walk the places where she walked, to perhaps find a bit of peace for them both. When she leaves the room, she finds Andrew in the kitchen preparing coffee. He looks at her anxiously, awaiting her decision. "I'll stay," she says without preamble. "For now, but with conditions." "Which ones?" "First, I want to know everything about my mother, everything you remember, all the letters she wrote, all the photos that exist. Second, I want to see all the rooms in this house, including those that are locked. And third," she hesitates, then continues firmly, "I am no longer your employee. I won't clean your house or prepare your meals as if nothing had happened." Andrew nods. "And what do you want to be?" Claire looks directly at him. "I want to be Helen's daughter recovering her mother's history, and if you really feel guilt for what your family did, you will help me do that." There is a long silence between them, full of unresolved tensions and complex emotions. Finally, Andrew extends his hand. "Deal!" Claire looks at his hand for a moment, remembering the night when she tended to his wound, the way his skin had burned at her touch. Now, knowing who he is and who she is, touching him seems both a betrayal and a necessity. She takes his hand. The grip is firm, sealing not just an agreement, but the beginning of a journey that both know will be painful and perhaps transformative. The morning that follows the agreement between Claire and Andrew is loaded with a different tension. It's no longer the tension of unacknowledged attraction, but something more complex, a mixture of curiosity, pain, and an intimacy forced by circumstances. They move through the house like two strangers, learning to share the same space, each cautious of the other's feelings. Andrew keeps his word. After breakfast, which they eat in respectful silence, he leads her to the office on the second floor. It's a masculine environment, with walls lined with books, a dark wood bureau, and windows that offer a view of the entire property. In a locked drawer, he keeps a metal box that Claire recognizes as the type used to store important documents. "It's all here," he says, placing the box on the table. "All the letters Helen wrote after she left here, documents about you, some photos." Claire's hands tremble when she opens the box. The first thing she sees is an envelope yellowed by time with her own childish handwriting, for Andrew. She picks it up carefully, as if it were a sacred relic. "You wrote this when you were 8 years old," Andrew explains, observing each of her reactions. "Helen sent it to me along with a letter from her. You asked when you would see me again." Claire opens the envelope and finds a drawing made with crayon. It's the figure of a big house with yellow windows and two people at the door, a woman and a child holding hands. At the top of the page, in childish letters, is written, "Me and Mommy in the pretty house." The tears come without warning. Claire covers her mouth with her hand to stifle a sob, and Andrew moves instinctively to console her, but stops halfway, remembering the complexity of the situation. "I remember drawing this," she whispers. "Mom always talked about the pretty house on the mountain. She said one day we would return." "Now you have returned," Andrew says softly. Claire takes the next letter, this one written by her mother's hand. The handwriting is careful, educated, but Claire can see where the pen failed, where tears stained the paper. "My dear Andrew," the letter begins, "I hope this letter finds you well and that you can forgive my insistence in writing. I know your father made it clear that I should no longer seek the family, but I need you to know the truth about what happened." Claire reads aloud, her voice breaking at various passages. The letter details Helen's last months at the farm, when she discovered she was pregnant and tried to tell Andrew's father. It describes the humiliation of being called a liar and gold digger, the pain of seeing the man she loved, because she really had fallen in love with Andrew's father, turn his back on her. "I don't want money," the letter continues. "I just want you to know that your little sister exists and that she asks about you every day. Claire has your eyes, Andrew, the same blue eyes as your father. When she smiles, I see you as a child running through the farm gardens." Andrew stops breathing. "Little sister?" Claire is also shocked. "She called you my brother. She always said I had an older brother who would one day come for me." They look at each other, and there is a revolution happening in the eyes of both. They are not just two strangers linked by a family tragedy. They are almost siblings, raised by the same woman, separated by pride and circumstances. "This changes everything," Andrew murmurs. "It changes," Claire agrees, but her voice carries a note that he can't identify. They continue reading the letters in silence. There is a painful progression in the correspondence. Helen initially hopeful, then worried, finally desperate. The last letters speak of financial difficulties, about Claire getting sick and not having money for a doctor, about the boarding house where they lived that was threatening to evict them. The last letter is different, shorter, written in a hurried handwriting. Andrew, if something happens to me, please take care of Claire. She is innocent in all this. There are people following me, asking questions. I think your father doesn't just want me to stay quiet. He wants me to completely disappear. If you're reading this, it means I was right. Please, don't let Claire grow up hating you all. I loved you too much to want that. The silence that follows is devastating. Claire feels as if the floor has disappeared beneath her feet. People following her? What does that mean? Andrew is pale. I don't know. My father never mentioned anything about having my mother followed, about threatening her. Claire, you have to understand. My father was paranoid when it came to the family's reputation. He had a lot to lose if Helen's story became public. But I never imagined he would go so far as to... To what? To have my mother killed? The words hang in the air like an accusation. Andrew rises abruptly, walking to the window. The fire at the boarding house, he says slowly. It was never properly investigated. My father had contacts in the police, in the fire department. Claire feels nauseous. Are you saying the fire may not have been accidental? I don't know, but now, reading these letters, Claire stands up too, the anger returning with full force. Your family not only abandoned my mother, you may have killed her. I didn't know. Andrew turns to her, his eyes desperate. You have to believe me. If I had known, but you didn't want to know, did you? When she left, you didn't ask where she had gone, if she was okay, if she needed help. You simply erased her from your life. Andrew can't deny it. The truth is there, raw and painful. He had been a confused and hurt teenager, but that doesn't justify years of indifference. You're right, he admits. I abandoned her when she needed me most. I abandoned both of you. Claire observes him, seeing the genuine pain on his face. Part of her wants to console him, to say he was just a child. But another part, the part that grew up without a father, that saw her mother die too young, can't forgive so easily. I want to see her room now, she says. Andrew nods. I'll get the keys. They walk in silence through the corridors until they reach the east wing. Andrew hesitates in front of a dark wooden door, the key trembling in his hand. No one has entered here since she left, he says. My father locked it and left everything as it was. When the door opens, Claire feels the air leave her lungs. The room is simple but welcoming, with a single bed covered by a crocheted quilt, a light wooden dresser, and a window that gives a view of the gardens. But what moves her are the personal details that remained untouched by time. On the dresser, there's a hairbrush with brown strands still tangled in the bristles. A small photo of baby Claire is propped against the mirror, and on the wall, pinned with thumbtacks, a calendar from 2003, the year her mother left. Claire walks through the room as if treading on sacred ground. She touches the quilt, opens the dresser drawers, finds clothes still folded, a diary with blank pages, a Bible with marked passages. She prayed a lot, Claire murmurs, leafing through the Bible. She always said God had a plan for us. Andrew observes from the doorframe, not daring to enter that intimate space. Claire picks up the hairbrush and holds it against her chest. I can still smell her perfume, she says, beginning to cry, as if she had just left here. It's then that Andrew can no longer contain himself. He enters the room and hugs her, pulling her against his chest while she cries for her mother, for her lost childhood, for the injustice of it all. Claire lets herself be consoled, momentarily forgetting who he is, remembering only that he also loved Helen, that he also suffered with her departure. In the embrace, they are just two orphans sharing a common pain. But when Claire raises her tear-wet face and finds Andrew's eyes so close to hers, something more complex awakens between them. Something that goes far beyond shared pain. The moment extends between them like a dangerous bridge. Claire can feel Andrew's breath against her face, see the small lines around his blue eyes, feel the warmth of his hands on her back. For an instant, they forget who they are, forget the pain, forget everything except the intensity of what they feel. But reality returns like a slap. Claire moves away abruptly, wiping tears with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she murmurs. I shouldn't have... Claire, Andrew begins, but she's already leaving the room. "I need fresh air," she says, without looking back. Claire runs through the corridors until she reaches the gardens, where the cold mountain breeze makes her catch her breath. What was happening in there? How can she be feeling something like this for Andrew, knowing who he is, knowing what his family did to her mother? She walks through the gardens, trying to organize her thoughts, when she hears footsteps behind her. It's Andrew, who followed her with a determination she hadn't seen before. "We need to talk about what happened in there," he says. "Nothing happened," Claire responds without turning around. "A lie." He forces her to face him, gently holding her arm. "And you know it." Claire looks at him, and there is a war happening in her eyes. "You don't understand. This is wrong in all possible ways." "Why?" "Because you're the son of the man who destroyed my mother. Because Helen saw us as siblings. Because I can't feel this for you." Andrew releases her arm but doesn't back away. "And what do you feel?" The question is direct, raw, and catches Claire off guard. She opens her mouth to lie, to deny, but the words don't come out. "It doesn't matter," she finally manages to say. "Yes, it does. To me it matters." "Why? Why do you care what I feel?" Andrew runs a hand through his hair, a gesture that Claire already recognizes as a sign of his internal tension. "Because since you arrived here, this house has come back to life. Because when you smile, even if rarely, I remember what it's like to be happy. Because when you look at me, I see the possibility of being a better man." His words hit her like physical blows. Claire shakes her head. "You can't say these things to me." "Why not?" "Because they make me want to forget who we are." "And what if we forgot? Just for a moment?" Claire looks at him as if he had suggested something blasphemous. "I can't forget my mother. I can't forget what your family did. I'm not asking you to forget Helen. I'm asking you to see that we aren't our parents. We aren't the mistakes they made." "But we carry the consequences of them," Claire retorts. "I grew up without a father because of your father's mistakes. My mother died young because of your father's mistakes." Andrew is silent for a long moment. When he speaks again, his voice is loaded with deep pain. "You're right, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life, but that doesn't change what I'm feeling for you, and it doesn't change what you're feeling for me, even if you deny it." Claire feels the tears returning. "Even if I felt something, and I'm not saying I do, it would be impossible. It would be a betrayal of my mother's memory. Or it would be exactly what she wanted," Andrew says softly. "In the letters, Helen said she didn't want you to grow up hating us. She said she loved us too much to want that. She was talking about forgiveness, not this. And what's the difference? Isn't forgiveness the purest form of love?" Claire looks at him, disturbed by the depth of his question. Before she can respond, they're interrupted by an unfamiliar male voice. What a touching scene. Both turn to find a man in his 50s walking towards them through the gardens. He is tall, well-dressed, with graying hair and a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Claire immediately feels something wrong about him, an instinct of danger that she's learned to trust. "Vincent," Andrew says, and there is clear tension in his voice. "What are you doing here?" "I came to check on my old partner," Vincent responds, but his eyes are fixed on Claire. "And I see you found interesting company." "Claire is none of your business." Andrew positions himself slightly in front of her, a protective gesture that doesn't go unnoticed by Vincent. "Claire?" Vincent repeats the name, and there is something in the way he pronounces it that makes Claire's blood freeze. "Claire Adams?" The fact that he knows her last name makes all the alarms sound in Claire's mind. "How do you know my name?" Vincent smiles, and this time the smile is genuinely cruel. "Oh, my dear, I know much more than your name. I know you're the daughter of Helen Adams, who worked here 20 years ago. I know you went through difficult times after you left here. I also know about the fire that killed your mother." Andrew stiffens. "Vincent, what do you want?" "Justice," Vincent responds simply. "Your father owed me a lot of money when he died, Andrew. Money from business that went badly, investments he guaranteed and didn't pay, but he was clever. Hid everything in offshore accounts, properties in third parties' names. And what does that have to do with me?" Claire asks, although she's already beginning to suspect. "Everything, my dear, because I recently discovered that one of those properties, this property to be more specific, was transferred to Helen Adams' name 2 days before she died, which means that by right of inheritance this farm belongs to you." The silence that follows is deafening. Claire feels the world spin around her. That's impossible. I have the documents. Vincent takes an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. All legal, all registered. Your father, he looks at Andrew, transferred the property to Helen as a kind of, let's call it life insurance. Very clever, I must say. If something happened to him, creditors couldn't take this property. Andrew is pale. My father never told me about this. Of course not, because that would mean admitting that Helen was right about everything. It would mean admitting that the child was his. Claire feels as if she's living a nightmare. But why are you telling me this? Because I want to make a deal, Vincent says, approaching her. You are the legitimate owner of this farm, which is worth several $1 million. I'll give up the debts your father, he looks at Andrew, in exchange for 80% of the property's value. That's blackmail, Andrew says through his teeth. That's business, Vincent corrects. And if Claire doesn't accept, I can make life very complicated for both of you. I can tell the press the whole story, how the powerful businessman Andrew Morgan is living on property that belongs to the daughter of the woman his family abandoned. I can also reopen investigations into Helen's death. The threat hangs in the air like a sword. Claire looks at Andrew, who seems to be fighting against violent impulses. I need time to think, she finally says. Of course, Vincent smiles again. You have 48 hours. After that, I'll assume you have no interest in cooperating. He walks away with the same arrogant confidence with which he arrived, leaving Claire and Andrew alone in the gardens, both trying to process the bomb that just exploded in their lives. This changes everything, Claire whispers. Yes, Andrew agrees. It changes. But when they look at each other, there is something more in both their eyes beyond shock. There is the recognition that, whatever the legal, financial, or family complications, what is happening between them is too real to be denied much longer. The night that follows Vincent's visit is one of the longest Claire has ever lived. She finds herself in the library, surrounded by the documents Vincent left, trying to understand how her life completely transformed in a matter of hours. The papers confirm everything. The farm was really transferred to her mother's name 2 days before the fire, and by right of inheritance, Claire is now the owner of a property valued at more than $15 million. Andrew enters the library carrying 2 cups of coffee, and Claire notices that his hands tremble slightly. He is as shaken as she is. Do you believe this? She asks, pointing to the documents. The papers seem authentic, he responds, sitting in an armchair next to hers. And it makes sense. My father was always paranoid about money, always arranged ways to protect the family's assets. But why would he do this? Why transfer the property to my mother if he rejected her? Andrew drinks a sip of coffee, thoughtful. Maybe because deep down he knew he was wrong. Maybe it was his way of ensuring that if something happened, you and Helen would be protected. Or maybe it was just to protect the property from creditors, as Vincent said. It could be both. Claire stands and walks to the window, observing the gardens illuminated by the moon. Do you realize what this means? I own the house where you live. I own the place where you grew up. I know, Andrew says softly, and Vincent wants me to sell 80% to him. If I do that, you'll have to leave here. I know that too. Claire turns to face him. Why are you so calm? Andrew stands and approaches her. Because strangely it gives me a sense of justice. This house should have been yours all along. You and Helen should have lived here, should have had the life you deserved. But you'll lose everything. I deserve to lose, he says, with a simplicity that disarms her. Not for what I did, but for what I didn't do. For the way I abandoned you both. Claire feels her heart tighten. Andrew. No, he raises his hand. Let me finish. I spent 20 years living with guilt, but never did anything to correct it. Now I have the chance. If you decide to sell to Vincent, I'll accept it. If you decide to keep the property, I'll leave and let you live the life your mother wanted you to have. And if I don't know what I want? Andrew comes closer, so close that Claire can feel his body heat. Then I'll stay here until you decide, and I'll spend each day trying to prove that I'm more than my family's mistakes. There is an intensity in his eyes that makes Claire forget to breathe. Why is this so important to you? Because you are important to me, he answers without hesitation. More important than this house, more important than the money, more important than anything. Claire feels her legs grow weak. You can't say things like that. Why not? It's the truth. Because it confuses me. Because it makes me want things I shouldn't want. Andrew raises his hand and gently touches her face. "And what do you want, Claire?" The question hangs between them, loaded with dangerous possibilities. Claire closes her eyes, fighting against the impulse to lean into his touch. "I want—" she begins but can't finish. "Say it," he whispers. "I want to forget who we are. I want to forget the past, the pain, everything, just for a moment." "Then forget," Andrew says, bringing his face closer to hers. "Just for a moment." When their lips finally meet, it's as if a dam has broken. All the repressed desire, all the accumulated tension explodes in a kiss that is both tender and desperate. Claire surrenders completely, momentarily forgetting all the reasons why this is impossible. Andrew's hands become entangled in her hair, and she feels years of solitude and pain being washed away by a wave of warmth and desire. It's wrong, it's complicated, but it's also the most right thing she has ever felt. When they finally separate, both are breathless. Claire rests her forehead on his, her eyes still closed. "This doesn't solve anything," she whispers. "I know," he responds. "But I also can't pretend it didn't happen." Claire opens her eyes and finds him looking at her with an intensity that makes her tremble. "What do we do now?" "Now you need to decide what you want to do with the property, and I need to tell you something I discovered about Vincent." The sudden change of subject makes her step back. "What did you discover?" Andrew moves away, running his hand through his hair in the gesture Claire knows well. "I called some contacts after he left. Vincent is telling the truth about my father's debts, but he's omitting something important." "What?" "He's not just a creditor. He was my father's partner in various questionable businesses, and I have reasons to believe he was involved in what happened to your mother." Claire's blood freezes. "What do you mean?" "The people that Helen mentioned in the last letter, who were following her. I think Vincent sent them. At my father's request or on his own, I don't know, but he had an interest in keeping Helen silenced." Claire feels nauseous. "Are you saying Vincent may have ordered my mother killed?" "I'm saying it's a possibility we can't ignore." The revelation completely changes Claire's perspective on the situation. Vincent isn't just a bothersome creditor. He may be her mother's murderer. "We have to go to the police," she says. "With what? Suspicions? Letters from 20 years ago? Vincent is too clever to leave evidence." "Then what do we do?" Andrew looks at her with a determination she hadn't seen before. "We make him believe you'll accept his proposal. And meanwhile, we investigate. We find proof." "That's dangerous," Claire realizes. "Very dangerous," Andrew agrees. "But it may be our only chance to discover the truth about what happened to Helen." Claire walks to the window again, processing everything. In less than a week, her life has completely transformed. She discovered she is the daughter of the man she always considered a villain, fell in love with the son of this man, discovered she is the owner of a fortune, and now may be face to face with her mother's murderer. "If we do this," she finally says, "we need to do it together, as partners." "Partners," Andrew repeats, and there is something in the way he pronounces the word that makes her turn to look at him. "In everything," she clarifies, and both know she's not just talking about the investigation. Andrew approaches her again, but this time doesn't touch her. "Are you sure? Because once we cross that line—" "I'm sure," Claire interrupts. "About this, about you, about us. I don't know how we'll solve all the complications, but I know I want to try." The smile that appears on Andrew's face is the first genuine one she's seen since she met him. "Then let's try," he says. "Let's discover the truth about Vincent, about your father, about everything. And after we'll discover how two people with a past like ours can have a future together," Claire completes. They look at each other for a long moment, both knowing they're embarking on a journey that can destroy or save them. But for the first time since they met, they aren't facing it alone. The next 2 days pass in a feverish intensity. Claire and Andrew work like amateur detectives, investigating every clue about Vincent Carter and his possible connection to Helen's death. Andrew uses his contacts in the business world to obtain information, while Claire meticulously studies each of her mother's letters, looking for details that might have gone unnoticed. During the day, they maintain a facade of normality, in case Vincent is observing the property, but at night they transform into conspirators, sharing discoveries and theories in the library that has become their headquarters. The proximity, forced by the investigation, further intensifies the connection between them, and Claire finds herself observing Andrew with a frequency that surprises her. There is something hypnotic in the way he concentrates when reading, in the manner his eyes narrow when he's thinking, in the way he runs his hand through his hair when frustrated. Claire realizes she is memorizing each gesture, each expression, as if studying a work of art. "I found something," Andrew announces one night, raising his eyes from a laptop. Vincent isn't just a questionable businessman, he has connections with very dangerous people. Claire approaches, leaning over his shoulder to read the screen. The proximity makes Andrew lose concentration for a moment, her subtle perfume invading his senses. "What did you discover?" she asks, unaware of the effect she's causing. Andrew forces himself to focus on the screen. He has links to a private security company that has already been investigated for intimidation and elimination of witnesses. They never managed to prove anything, but there's a pattern. What kind of pattern? People who represented financial or reputational threats to powerful clients ended up suffering accidents, fires, car accidents, apparent overdoses. Claire feels a chill run down her spine, like in my mother's case. Exactly. Andrew turns in the chair and suddenly they are very close, their faces just inches from each other. "Claire, this means you could be in danger. If Vincent suspects we're investigating, then we have to be smarter than him," she interrupts. But her voice comes out huskier than intended. There is a moment of electric tension between them. Andrew raises his hand and gently touches her face, and Claire involuntarily leans into the touch. "I won't let anything happen to you," he says, his voice loaded with a fierce promise. "And I won't let him escape what he did to my mother," Claire responds. The kiss that follows is different from the first. Less desperate, deeper, full of unspoken promises. When they separate, both know they've crossed another invisible line. "Claire," Andrew begins, but is interrupted by the sound of the phone ringing. They look at each other, tense. It's almost 11 at night. Andrew answers. "Andrew Morgan. I hope you're enjoying your time together." Vincent's voice sounds sinister through the phone, "because the deadline is running out." "What do you want, Vincent?" "I want an answer. Does Claire accept my proposal or not?" Andrew looks at Claire, who makes an affirmative gesture. They had agreed she would pretend to accept to buy time. "She accepts," Andrew says, "but she wants to meet with you personally to discuss the details." "Interesting." "Very well. Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon, at the cafe of the Biltmore Hotel in Asheville. She comes alone." "No," Andrew says immediately. "I'm going with her." "No, my dear Andrew. She comes alone or there's no deal." The call ends, leaving a heavy silence in the library. "I'm not going to let you go alone," Andrew says immediately. "You don't have a choice. If he suspects we're plotting something—" "Claire, this man may have killed your mother. I will not allow you to put yourself at risk." The protection in his voice makes Claire's heart race, but also awakens her determination. "He won't do anything to me in a public place, and besides, this could be our chance to make him confess something." "How?" Claire takes Andrew's cell phone. "You'll call me during the meeting and leave the line open. You'll be able to hear everything." "And if it goes wrong?" "Then you call the police." Andrew runs his hands over his face, clearly tortured by the situation. "I should have killed Vincent when he appeared here." The casual violence in his voice surprises Claire. "You're not a murderer, Andrew." "For you I would be," he responds without hesitation, and the intensity in his eyes makes her believe he's serious. The confession hangs between them, revealing the depth of Andrew's feelings. Claire feels a mixture of fear and emotion, with the discovery that someone would protect her at any cost. "I don't want you to become something you're not because of me," she says softly. "It's too late for that," Andrew responds. "You've already changed me, Claire, from the moment you arrived here." They spend the night awake, finalizing the plan for the next day's meeting. Claire will use a small hidden recorder, in addition to the open phone. If Vincent says anything incriminating, they'll have evidence. When dawn finally arrives, both are exhausted but determined. Claire dresses carefully, choosing clothes that make her look vulnerable and confident at the same time. Andrew reviews the emergency plan for the 10th time. "If anything goes wrong," he says, holding her shoulders, "you run. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to get more information. You run." "I understand. Promise." Claire sees the barely disguised desperation in his eyes and feels her heart break. "I promise." Andrew pulls her into a desperate embrace, as if saying goodbye. "I love you," he whispers against her hair. The words come out so naturally that it takes a moment to register. When they separate, both are shocked by the confession. "Andrew, I know it's complicated, I know our past is a mess, but I needed you to know, in case—" Claire silences him with a kiss. When they separate, her eyes are bright with unshed tears. "I love you too," she whispers. "And that's why I'll come back, because now we have something to fight for." The mutual confession transforms everything. They are no longer just two strangers united by tragic circumstances. They are two people who love each other, willing to risk everything for the truth and for a future together. When Claire leaves for the meeting with Vincent, Andrew stays at the library window, watching the car move away along the winding road. For the first time in 20 years, he prays, to any god who might be listening, for the woman he loves to return home safely. In the car, Claire feels a mixture of terror and determination running through her veins. She is going to face her mother's possible murderer, but she is no longer alone. She has Andrew, she has love, and she has a reason to survive. The meeting that could change everything is just a few hours away. The cafe at the Biltmore Hotel is busy when Claire arrives, exactly at 3 in the afternoon. She chooses a table in the corner, from where she can see the entire entrance, and discreetly checks if the recorder is working and if the phone is connected with Andrew. Her hands tremble slightly as she orders a coffee. She knows she won't be able to drink. Vincent arrives punctually, dressed impeccably, with a smile that can't completely disguise the coldness in his eyes. He sits at the table without ceremony, as if it were a common social meeting. "Claire, my dear, you look beautiful today," he says, and there is something in the way his eyes scan her face that makes her feel like prey being evaluated. "Thank you," she responds, keeping her voice firm. "Let's get straight to the point. You said you want 80% of the property." "Straight to the point. I like that." Vincent signals the waiter to order a whiskey, although it's the middle of the afternoon. "Yes, 80% is a fair price, considering I'm giving up millions that your biological father owed me." The casual mention of Andrew's father as her biological father makes Claire stiffen. "Are you absolutely certain that my mother was telling the truth about paternity?" Vincent laughs, an unpleasant sound. "Oh, my dear, there was no doubt whatsoever. Helen may have been many things, but a liar she was not. You have the Morgan's eyes, the same face shape. Any idiot could see the resemblance. Then why did Andrew's father reject her? Because Edward Morgan was a proud and paranoid man. He couldn't admit he had gotten involved with a maid. It would be a scandal that would destroy the carefully built reputation of the family." Claire notices that Vincent is speaking in the past tense about Edward Morgan, with a familiarity that goes beyond a simple commercial relationship. "You were close," she observes. "We were partners for more than 15 years when Helen appeared pregnant. Edward told me about the situation, asked my opinion on how to deal with it." "And what was your opinion?" Claire asks, feeling her heart accelerate. Vincent takes a generous sip of whiskey before answering. "I told him that problems like that needed to be eliminated permanently." The coldness with which he pronounces the words makes Claire's blood freeze. She forces herself to maintain a neutral expression. "Eliminated how?" "There are various ways to make a person disappear, Claire. Money sometimes works, threats other times, and when nothing else works." He shrugs, as if discussing the weather. Claire feels nauseated, but forces herself to continue. "And in my mother's case, what worked?" Vincent observes her for a long moment, and Claire has the terrible sensation that he knows exactly what she's trying to do. "You're smarter than I thought," he finally says. "Or braver. Perhaps both. I just want to understand what happened." "Of course you do, the little daughter wanting to avenge Mommy." Vincent's tone becomes crueler. "Very touching. Your mother had the same irritating stubbornness. You knew her well." "Better than she would have liked. You see, Claire, after Edward expelled her from the farm, he became worried. Helen knew family secrets, had access to information that could cause problems, so he asked me to monitor her." "Monitor her how?" "Initially, just observation. Making sure she wasn't talking to journalists, wasn't looking for lawyers. But Helen was persistent. She kept writing letters, trying to prove the child was Edward's. Even living in poverty, she wouldn't give up." Claire feels tears burning in her eyes, but contains them. And then Edward decided he needed a more definitive solution. Helen had become a problem that wasn't just going to disappear. The fire, Claire whispers. Vincent smiles, and it's the coldest smile she has ever seen. Accidents happen, my dear, especially in cheap boarding houses with precarious electrical wiring. The confession is so casual, so despicable, that Claire feels like vomiting, but she needs more. And me? Why did I survive? Pure luck, or maybe bad luck depending on the point of view. You were sleeping in the back room when the fire started. The neighbors got you out before the flames spread. Did you try to find me afterward? For what? You were just a child. Without the mother to create problems, you didn't represent any threat. Vincent finishes his whiskey. At least not until now. The implicit threat in the last words makes Claire instinctively recoil. Vincent notices her reaction. Oh, don't worry, dear. I have no intention of repeating the mistakes of the past. This time we'll resolve everything in a civilized manner. You sell me your part of the property, take your money and disappear forever. Simple as that. And if I don't want to sell? Vincent's smile completely disappears. Then you may discover that accidents are more common than one imagines, especially for young women who ask unnecessary questions. Claire feels fear running cold through her veins, but also feels something stronger. Anger. Anger for the mother who died burning, for the stolen childhood, for the years of poverty and suffering. Are you threatening me? I'm being clear about the consequences of poor choices. Vincent leans forward, his voice becoming low and dangerous. Your mother made poor choices, Claire. You don't need to repeat her mistakes. At that moment, Claire hears a commotion on the other side of the cafe. People stand up. There are shouts. She turns and sees Andrew walking determinedly toward their table, his face a mask of controlled fury. Andrew, Vincent says, apparently without surprise. I said Claire should come alone. Change of plans, Andrew responds, stopping beside the table. His hands are closed into fists, and Claire can see he's fighting against violent impulses. You heard everything? Claire asks. Every word. Andrew looks at Vincent with pure hatred. Including the confession about Helen's murder. Vincent laughs. Confession? I didn't confess anything. I just told an interesting story about accidents and coincidences. The police might disagree with that, Andrew says, taking the phone from his pocket. The police? Vincent doesn't seem the least bit concerned. You really think a recording obtained through a set-up meeting will be accepted as evidence? You think anyone will believe your word against mine? Vincent's confidence is disturbing, but Claire notices something he hasn't. Several people in the cafe are observing the conversation, some even discreetly recording with their cell phones. Maybe not, she says, slowly standing up. But they will. Vincent turns and realizes he has become the center of attention. His face contorts with rage when he understands he's been caught in a trap. You little bitch, he growls, abruptly standing. It's the mistake Andrew was waiting for. He moves like lightning, grabbing Vincent by the collar and pushing him against the wall. You don't talk to her like that, Andrew says through his teeth. You don't talk to her ever again. Let me go, Vincent gasps. You have no idea who you're messing with. Yes, I do, Andrew responds. I'm messing with the murderer of the mother of the woman I love. And if you think I'm going to let you walk out of here... Andrew, stop, Claire interrupts, touching his arm. Let the police deal with him. Andrew looks into her eyes and sees the strength that reassures him. Slowly he releases Vincent, who adjusts his clothing with false dignity. This isn't over, Vincent says, but his voice has lost its previous confidence. Yes, it is, Claire responds, with a firmness that surprises everyone, including herself. It ended the moment you confessed to killing my mother in front of witnesses. When the police arrive 10 minutes later, Vincent Carter is being restrained by 3 men from the cafe as he tries to escape. Claire and Andrew watch him being taken away in handcuffs, finally paying for the crimes he committed 20 years earlier. It's over, Andrew says, pulling Claire into an embrace. Yes, she responds, letting herself be enveloped by the safety of his arms. Finally over. 6 months later, Blackstone Estate breathes new life. The windows that remained closed for years now let in the golden light of late afternoon. The covered mirrors have been uncovered and the clocks have finally returned to marking the present time. Claire walks through the gardens she now truly considers her own, but which she chose to share with the man who became much more than a partner or companion. Vincent Carter's trial was a landmark in the American press. The cafe recordings, along with witness testimonies and the evidence that Claire and Andrew managed to gather, were enough to convict him of homicide, plus a series of other crimes that the investigation revealed. He got 25 years in prison, a sentence that brought immense relief to Claire, but that didn't completely erase the scars of the past. The property, officially hers by right, underwent a complete transformation. Claire decided to keep the estate, but not as an isolated private residence. Together, she and Andrew created a social project, a shelter for women in vulnerable situations and their children, offering not just temporary housing, but professional training, psychological support, and the chance to start over. Helen would have been proud, Andrew had said when Claire presented the idea. She always believed in giving second chances. The project became the passion of both. Claire discovered she had a natural talent for administration and for dealing with people in difficult moments. Andrew used his business connections to secure funding and partnerships. Together they created something bigger than either could have built alone, but the deepest transformation happened between them. The love that was born amid pain and secrets solidified into a partnership that goes far beyond the romantic. They learned to navigate the complexity of their family past, choosing to focus on the future they were building together, instead of getting lost in the wounds of the past. On a September afternoon, Claire is in her mother's old room, which now serves as a discreet but loving memorial. She transformed the space into a small library, with Helen's photos on a special shelf and her letters kept in a frame. It's there that she goes when she needs to talk to her mother, when she needs guidance, or simply when she wants to feel her presence. "Mom," she whispers, touching the photo where Helen smiles shyly at the camera. "I hope you understand. I know it's complicated. I know our history with the Morgans is full of pain. But Andrew, he's not his father, and I'm not the wounded daughter you left behind. We are different. We chose to be different." She feels a gentle hand on her shoulder and turns to find Andrew at the door. He has learned to respect these intimate moments of hers with her mother's memory, but always stays nearby in case she needs him. "How was the meeting with the investors?" she asks. "We got the funding for the second phase of the project," Andrew responds, approaching to hug her from behind. "We'll be able to welcome 15 more families by the end of the year." Claire leans against him, feeling the solidity of his presence. Helen would be so happy to know that her house has become a place of hope instead of sadness. She would, and she would be proud of you, of the strong and generous woman you've become. They stay silent for a moment, observing through the window the movement of women and children in the gardens. Some of the sheltered women are playing with their children, others are in a computer class in what was once the formal dining room, and a group works in the community garden that Claire created, where before there was only ornamental lawn. "Claire," Andrew says softly, moving away to stand in front of her, "I have something for you." He takes a small box from his pocket, and Claire feels her heart race. "Andrew, I know our story isn't conventional," he begins, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "I know we started as strangers, became enemies, discovered we're almost family, and fell in love in the midst of all that. I know that many people will question if it's right, if it's possible to build something solid on such a complex foundation." Claire feels tears forming in her eyes. "But I also know," Andrew continues, "that the love I feel for you is the most real and pure thing I've ever experienced. I know that you make me want to be a better man every day. I know that together we've created something beautiful where before there was only pain. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life building good things with you." He kneels and Claire covers her mouth with her hands, trying to contain the sobs of emotion. "Claire Adams, will you marry me? Not as Helen's daughter and Edward's son, not as the heiress and the former owner, but as Claire and Andrew, two people who chose to love each other despite everything?" The answer comes in an emotional whisper. "Yes." When Andrew places the ring on her finger, Claire feels as if a cycle is completing. Not a cycle of vengeance or pain, but a cycle of redemption and love. "I love you," she says, pulling his face for a kiss, "and I love who we've become together." The wedding happens 3 months later, in a simple ceremony in the estate's gardens. The guests include many of the women who were sheltered by the project, who became a chosen family for Claire. Andrew invites few friends, preferring to celebrate with the people who are part of his new life, instead of carrying the weight of the past. During the ceremony, Claire carries a small bouquet of garden flowers tied with a ribbon that belonged to her mother, a way to include Helen in the celebration. And when she and Andrew exchange vows they wrote together, there isn't a person present who isn't moved by the strength of the love that was born from pain and transformed into hope. "We are proof," Claire says in her vow, looking directly into Andrew's eyes, "that it's possible to transform the worst circumstances into the best blessings. That love can be born where we least expect, grow where it seems impossible, and flourish where it should be forbidden. You taught me that sometimes the best love stories begin with the worst stories of pain." "And you taught me," Andrew responds, his voice choked with emotion, "that forgiveness isn't forgetting but choosing to build something new. That strength isn't never breaking, but knowing how to rebuild yourself. That family isn't just blood but choice. And that true love isn't easy, but worth every challenge." When they are declared husband and wife, the kiss they exchange is full of promises for the future, of shared hope, of a life built on solid foundations of mutual respect and conscious love. Later, during the party, Claire steps away for a few minutes to be alone on the porch where her mother used to sit. She looks at the stars beginning to appear in the clear mountain sky and whispers a prayer of gratitude. "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me to be strong, for showing me that it's worth fighting for love, and for bringing me, even if in a way we could never have imagined, to my house and to my home." Andrew finds her there a few minutes later, and they stay embraced, observing the movement of the party that celebrates not just their wedding, but the transformation of a place of sadness into a sanctuary of hope. "No regrets?" he asks, kissing the top of her head. "None," Claire responds, interlacing her fingers with his. "All the paths we walked, all the pain we went through, everything was worth it, because it brought us here. And now we live," she smiles, turning to face him. "We live, we love, we build, and we prove that sometimes the most unlikely endings are the most beautiful." They return to the party hand in hand, ready to officially begin the life they chose to build together. A life that honors the past without becoming prisoner to it, that transforms pain into purpose, and that proves that true love can flourish in the most unexpected places. Blackstone Estate, which for so many years kept secrets and tears, now resonates with children's laughter, hopeful conversations of women rebuilding their lives, and the silent but deep love of two hearts that chose to find each other despite all the reasons to be lost. And somewhere Claire is certain Helen smiles.